My father always said a degree from NYU would open doors. He never mentioned what might be waiting behind them. Let me tell you about debt. Not the kind that builds up slowly over a lifetime of bad decisions, but the crushing, suffocating weight of student loans that drop on you the moment you switch your tassel from right to left. 6 figures of debt that turn every job rejection into another nail in your financial coffin. My name is Sophie Chen, and 4 months ago, I walked across a stage to receive my business administration degree, certain that the world was about to open up for me. My parents had moved from Shanghai to Queens 25 years ago, with nothing but dreams and determination. They'd worked 18-hour days at their restaurant so I could have opportunities they never had. Education is the key, my mother would say while counting tips late at night. Study hard, go to good school, get good job. I did everything right. Graduated top of my class in high school. Got into New York University's Stern School of Business. Maintained a 3.9 GPA while juggling internships and part-time work. Even started a successful business club on campus. The path seemed clear: graduate, land a job at one of the big consulting firms, make my parents proud. Then reality hit. 237 job applications, 83 interviews, 0 offers. We're looking for someone with more experience. The position has been filled internally. Your qualifications are impressive, but always the same polite rejections. Meanwhile, the loan payments loomed closer, and my savings from working at the campus bookstore dwindled. I moved from my shared apartment in Brooklyn to a tiny studio in Washington Heights, the kind of place where the roaches pay rent and the heating works only when it feels like it. My parents offered to let me move back home, of course. The thought of returning to my childhood bedroom above the restaurant, smelling of soy sauce and defeat, was almost worse than the debt. Almost. That's how I found myself scrolling through job listings at 3 a.m., the blue light of my laptop illuminating a stack of past due notices. Most of the listings were the usual entry-level traps: commission-only sales jobs, pyramid schemes disguised as entrepreneurial opportunities, unpaid internships requiring 5 years of experience. Then I saw it, buried between ads for dog walkers and personal assistants. Night cleaner needed, Morgan Grace Building, $70 per hour, immediate start. No experience necessary, must be detail-oriented and able to follow instructions precisely. Night shift only, 12 a.m. to 4 a.m. Contact, hiring@morgangracebuilding.com. The pay had to be a typo. $70 an hour for cleaning? That was lawyer money, not janitor money. But desperation has a way of suspending disbelief. I sent my application, not expecting a response. The reply came within minutes, despite it being the middle of the night. Dear Ms. Chen, your application has been accepted. Please report to the Morgan Grace Building tonight at 11:45 p.m. sharp. Bring nothing but yourself. Everything will be provided. One question. Are you good at following instructions? Regards, HR Department, Morgan Grace Building. I'd never heard of the Morgan Grace Building, which was strange given my 4 years of studying business in Manhattan. A quick Google search yielded nothing. No website, no reviews, no news articles. Just a street address in Midtown and a single black and white photo from what looked like the 1950s. The rational part of my brain screamed that this was sketchy. No interview, no background check. But when you're staring down $180,000 in student loans, rationality takes a back seat to necessity. I arrived at the address at exactly 11:45 p.m. The building rose before me like a monument to corporate excess. 60 stories of glass and steel disappearing into low clouds, its windows reflecting the city lights in ways that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Most of the offices were dark, but here and there, lights flickered in patterns that made my eyes hurt if I looked too long. The revolving door moved silently. too silently for something made of glass and steel. As I stepped through, the noise of the city disappeared completely, not muffled, but erased, as if someone had pressed a universal mute button. The only sound was the soft buzzing of fluorescent lights and something else. Something that might have been whispering, or might have been the building's ventilation system having a conversation with itself. The lobby was a study in corporate sterility, all white marble and chrome that seemed to have been polished beyond the normal limits of shine. The security desk dominated the space, but something about it made my architect father's voice echo in my head. Bad design creates unease. The human mind knows when proportions are wrong. The desk was too high, its angles slightly off, as if it had been built for someone, or something, not quite human. Behind it sat Mr. Kane. At least, that's what his nameplate said, though the letters seemed to rearrange themselves when I wasn't looking directly at them. He was old, but in a way I couldn't quite quantify. Not elderly, but ancient, like something that had been there since the building's foundation was laid. His uniform looked like it belonged in a black and white photograph from the building's early days. The fabric faded in patterns that moved when I tried to focus on them. His hands, when he pushed the clipboard across the desk, were pale and papery, with too many knuckles. "You're the new cleaner," he said, his voice carrying an echo that didn't match the lobby's acoustics. "Right on time. They like that." "They?" I asked. He ignored my question, instead tapping the clipboard with one long finger. "Sign here, initial here, and here, blood type here, preferred method of contact in case of displacement here." "Displacement?" "Interdepartmental transfer," he corrected smoothly. "Standard paperwork." The forms looked normal at first glance. Typical employment contracts, liability waivers, non-disclosure agreements. But the text seemed to shift when I tried to read the fine print, the words rearranging themselves into phrases that made my head hurt. "Employee hereby acknowledges that linear time is a corporate construct. In the event of temporal displacement or existential reassignment, the company reserves the right to adjust reality as needed." As I signed, I noticed something strange about the papers. Hidden text seemed to appear and disappear depending on how the fluorescent lights hit the page. I tilted the clipboard slightly, and there they were, rules written in what looked like disappearing ink. Cleaning staff regulations. Rule 1. Clean the offices in the exact order listed on the schedule. Do not skip any. Deviation disrupts the pattern. They notice disruptions. Rule 2. If an office door is locked, skip it and return in exactly 17 minutes. Not 16, not 18. They count the seconds. Rule 3. Avoid looking directly into any reflective surfaces after midnight. Rule 4. If the elevator stops at the 13th floor, do not exit. Close the doors immediately. Keep pressing the button until it moves. Rule 5. If you hear your name, do not respond. Rule 6. The water coolers must remain unplugged after 2 a.m. Rule 7. If you hear typing from an empty office, do not investigate. They're composing your resignation letter. Rule 8. All trash must be disposed of in reverse alphabetical order. The bins get hungry if you mix them up. The rules continued, but they faded before I could read them all. When I looked up to ask Kane about them, he was gone. The security desk looked different somehow, older, dustier, as if it had been abandoned for years. I started on the 20th floor as instructed. The elevator ride was unnervingly smooth, with no sensation of movement at all. When the doors opened, I was hit by a wall of silence, not just quiet, but a complete absence of sound that made my ears ring. The floor was exactly what you'd expect from a high-rise office building: endless cubicles, glass-walled conference rooms, and corner offices with impressive views of the city. but something felt off. The cubicle walls seemed to shift slightly when I wasn't looking directly at them. The distance between offices appeared to stretch and contract as I walked. I pulled out my cleaning cart and checked the schedule. First up was conference room 20A. Simple enough. But as I walked toward it, I noticed something strange about my reflection in the glass walls. It wasn't matching my movements exactly. There was a slight delay, like a video feed with lag. And sometimes when I turned quickly, I could have sworn my reflection was smiling when I wasn't. The conference room itself was immaculate, which was odd considering it was supposed to need cleaning. The whiteboard was completely blank except for a single dot in the center that seemed to follow my movements. The chairs were all pushed in at precisely the same angle. On the table, a single pen lay perfectly parallel to the edge. As I wiped down the table, I heard something that made my blood run cold, the distinct sound of a chair pushing back from the table. But when I turned around, all the chairs were still in place. Just my imagination, I told myself. Just nerves from being alone in a strange building. Then I saw the condensation on the window, words forming as if someone was writing them from the other side. You missed a spot. Against my better judgment, I pressed my ear to the door. The typing stopped immediately, replaced by the sound of chair wheels rolling across carpet, getting closer to the door. Then a voice, barely a whisper. Sophie, we've been expecting you. I stumbled away from the door, my heart pounding. The typing resumed, but now it sounded like multiple keyboards, all slightly out of sync, creating a cacophony of clicks and clacks that seemed to follow me down the hallway. At exactly 12 a.m., all the lights on the floor dimmed simultaneously. The fluorescent tubes hummed at a lower frequency, casting shadows that didn't quite match the objects casting them. My phone's screen flickered and died, even though it had been fully charged. I needed to move to the next floor, but the prospect of getting into the elevator filled me with dread. Still, the schedule was clear. 21st floor next. Rule 1 echoed in my mind. Clean the offices in the exact order listed. Do not skip any. The elevator arrived with a soft ding that sounded almost musical. Too musical, like someone humming a tune slightly off key. As I stepped inside, I noticed the buttons were arranged wrong, the numbers weren't in order, and some were repeated. And there it was, between floors 12 and 14, a button marked 13 that I could have sworn wasn't there before. The ascent was smooth until we passed the 12th floor. Then the elevator shuddered and stopped. The display flickered between numbers before settling on 13. My stomach dropped as the doors began to slide open. The corridor beyond was wrong in ways I couldn't quite process. It stretched impossibly far, the walls covered in what looked like old-fashioned wallpaper that shifted and swirled in patterns that hurt my eyes. The fluorescent lights flickered in sequence, creating an illusion of movement, as if the hallway was breathing. I remembered Rule 4 and lunged for the close door button. But before the doors could shut completely, I heard it. Rapid footsteps approaching from the darkness, accompanied by the sound of something being dragged. A voice, distorted but unmistakably calling my name. Sophie, join us in accounting. The doors finally closed, cutting off the voice mid-sentence. The elevator resumed its ascent, but now I could hear faint whispers coming from the speakers that usually played music. If I concentrated, I could make out fragments of conversations. Her paperwork is almost ready. Just needs to sign in triplicate. Permanent position available. When I reached the 22nd floor, my cleaning schedule had changed again. New offices had been added, written in that same wet ink that never seemed to dry. One entry caught my eye. Office 2213 must be cleaned when the time is right. I found 2,213 locked, but my watch showed it was time. Exactly 17 minutes had passed. The door opened smoothly, revealing a perfectly preserved office from what looked like the 1950s. An old typewriter sat on the desk, the paper in it still moving as if someone had just finished typing. I approached cautiously and read the words on the page. Notice of permanent employment. Employee, Sophie Chen. Position, night shift, eternal. Start date, tonight. End date, never. The paper was topped with a post-it note that read simply, "You're next." The typewriter began moving on its own, keys striking the paper with sharp metallic clicks. "We see you read the offer letter. Welcome to the team. Your orientation begins now." I backed away from the desk, knocking over a cup of pens. When they hit the floor, instead of scattering, they arranged themselves into an arrow pointing at the office's large window. Beyond the glass, the city lights seemed wrong. Buildings were in the wrong places, some moving slowly across the skyline like ships at sea. It was after midnight now, and Rule 3 burned in my mind. Avoid looking directly into any reflective surfaces. But in an office building made of glass and chrome, that was nearly impossible. Every window, every computer screen, every polished surface seemed to contain movement just at the edge of my vision. I made the mistake of glancing at the window. My reflection stood there, but it wasn't mirroring my movements. It was completely still, head tilted at an impossible angle, smiling with too many teeth. Behind it, I could see other reflections emerging from the darkness. Office workers in outdated clothes, their movements jerky and wrong, like marionettes with tangled strings. I fled to the bathroom, forgetting in my panic that it would be full of mirrors. The moment I pushed open the door, I saw them. Dozens of versions of myself reflected infinitely in the mirrors, each one slightly different. Some wore old-fashioned cleaning uniforms, others business suits from different decades. All of them were smiling, that same terrible smile. One reflection stepped forward, pressing against the glass like it was a thin membrane. The mirror's surface rippled like water, and a hand, my hand, but wrong, with too many joints, began to reach through. I threw my cleaning rag at the mirror in panic. The glass shattered, but instead of falling, the shards hung in the air. Each piece contained a miniature version of myself, all moving independently, all trying to crawl out of their glass prisons. Their whispers filled the room. "Stay with us. The benefits package is to die for. We need someone with your qualifications." The cleaning schedule in my hand had changed again. Now every page was filled with the same task, repeated endlessly. Clean office, 1313 on floor 13. Clean office, 1313 on floor 13. Clean office, 1313 on floor 13. At the bottom, in fresh ink that dripped like blood, "Failure to complete assigned tasks will result in immediate and permanent reassignment." The elevator arrived without being called. When the doors opened, all the chairs from the offices were inside, arranged in a circle, all facing outward. They rocked slightly, as if recently vacated. A nameplate had appeared on each one, different variations of Sophie Chen, night shift supervisor, with dates ranging from 1950 to 2023. My watch read 3:15 a.m. The final rule had appeared on my schedule. Leave the building by 3:33 a.m. Failure to leave will result in permanent employment. The elevator seemed to move in slow motion, each floor taking longer to pass than the last. The numbers on the display flickered randomly, occasionally showing impossible floors. -13, square root of 16, infinity. The office chairs continued their gentle rocking, the nameplates changing every time I blinked. At 3:28 a.m., The elevator shuddered to a halt between floors. The lights flickered, and in the brief moments of darkness, I could see them. Countless former employees pressed against the elevator walls, their bodies distorted as if they'd been flattened into the metal. Their whispers surrounded me. "Your resume is so impressive. We offer an excellent retirement plan. The night shift is forever." I pried open the elevator doors, finding myself facing a darkened stairwell. The emergency lights cast a sickly green glow that made the stairs look like they were moving, rippling like waves in a dark ocean. As I started down, I heard the distinct sound of dress shoes on metal, hundreds of feet descending in perfect synchronization, always just a few flights above me. 3:30 a.m. The stairwell seemed endless. Each time I looked up or down, the spiraling stairs stretched infinitely in both directions. Signs for different floors made no sense. Floor 7.5. Floor ? Floor yesterday. Behind me, the footsteps grew closer. 3:31 a.m. The walls began to sweat something that looked like ink, the droplets forming into company memos and performance reviews as they ran down the walls. My name was on all of them, along with employment dates spanning decades I hadn't lived through. 3:32 a.m. I finally burst into the lobby, but it had changed. The modern decor was gone, replaced by a bizarre amalgamation of office styles from every decade of the building's existence. Mr. Kane's security desk had multiplied. Now there were dozens of them arranged in a maze, each staffed by a version of him from a different era. The exit was locked. Through the glass doors, I could see the city outside, but it looked wrong. Buildings bent at impossible angles, streets folding in on themselves like a Mobius strip. My watch showed 3:33 a.m., and I felt something changing in the air, like reality was solidifying around me. Then I saw it. The faint glow of an emergency exit sign, its letters rearranging themselves continuously. Exit, exist, exile, enter. Breaking every rule I'd been given, I ran for it. The building groaned, the floor rippling under my feet like I was running on liquid glass. The emergency door felt heavier than it should have, as if the building itself was trying to hold it shut. As I pushed against it, I heard a sound like tearing paper, the barrier between realities ripping apart. The stairwell beyond stretched down into infinite darkness, but I didn't hesitate. I ran. Behind me, the building's voice, 1,000 whispers combined into one, called out, "Your 2 weeks' notice has been denied." I emerged onto the street at exactly 3:34 a.m., collapsing onto the sidewalk. The night air had never tasted sweeter. When I looked back, the Morgan Grace building appeared completely normal, just another glass tower reaching into the sky. A man in an expensive suit walked past, giving me an odd look. He entered through the revolving door as if nothing was wrong. For a moment, I caught his reflection in the glass. It remained outside, watching me, smiling that too wide smile. I threw away my cleaning schedule, watching as the paper folded itself into an origami crane and flew away. I swore never to return, not for any salary. But the building had other plans. When I got home, my apartment had changed. The layout was slightly off, the furniture arranged like an office waiting room. My bedroom door had a nameplate, Sophie Chen, remote worker. My laptop was open, displaying a new email. "Dear Ms. Chen, due to your outstanding performance during the trial period, we are pleased to offer you a permanent position with our organization. The Morgan Grace building believes in a flexible work environment. If you won't come to the office will come to you. Your home office has already been set up according to company specifications. Please note that all reflective surfaces are now company property, and your reflection has been reassigned to the night shift. Welcome to the team. Sincerely, Human Resources Floor 13. In my bathroom mirror, my reflection waves at me, even though my hand is still. It's wearing a company badge I've never owned, and behind it, I can see an office stretching into infinity. Sometimes late at night, I hear typing coming from my closet. Performance reviews slip under my door, evaluating jobs I haven't done yet. My kitchen has a water cooler now. I keep it unplugged, but every morning at 2 a.m., I hear it bubbling. The Morgan Grace Building doesn't let go of its employees easily. And somewhere in that maze of glass and steel, in an office that exists in all times at once, there's a desk with my name on it, waiting.